Everybody thinks of movies where there is a sex trafficking victim and there's a gun held to the back of the head, or there's chains involved. In general, that is not the case. That's a very small percentage of what is really going on. It's truly a psychological kidnapping.
The sex trade is one of the oldest crimes in the books, and it wasn't long ago you could find women walking the streets of downtown Billings selling sex.
Montana-Minnesota Avenue, very notorious for being the rough part of town. Back then, you could see it. You could see the prostitute on the street. You could see the pimp driving around, and you could see the cars and the Johns that were stopping to talk to the girls.
Billings Chief of Police Rich St. John has been with the department over 30 years. Back in those days, he was just a young patrol cop working the streets.
There was a concern and a hue and cry about that. Police department really worked hard to eradicate some of that, and as you said, they've moved indoors, and more recently they're online and on computers.
FBI Special Agent Brandon Walter has investigated many of these cases over the last several years.
When I grew up in Billings years ago, Montana Avenue was the track where the females hung out on the street corner. Technology like Backpage, like Tinder, has made that no longer necessary.
Backpage.com is a website modeled similar to Craigslist. In 2016, the CEO of Backpage was arrested on felony pimping charges after a 3-year investigation concluded the site's escort ads were for the sole purpose of buying and selling sex. Many of the ads involved victims of sex trafficking. Many were under the age of 18.
I can log into Backpage and I can see the 5 girls that are going to be in Billings tonight. Right now we could do that. At any night there are at least 5 girls in Billings whose sexual services are for sale per night.
Tinder, on the other hand, is a dating app for your cell phone where you're able to view photos and start private conversations with others based on your location.
With Tinder, it would be a way to advertise a juvenile. Law enforcement would never see that communication unless they set up a Tinder account on their own.
Walter says these websites and applications are not just a mode of selling services, they're a way for traffickers to recruit their next victims.
Our youth are splashing their vulnerabilities all over their social media, and this is where the traffickers are looking for them, and they know how to spot vulnerabilities.
Georgia Cady is the director of the Human Trafficking Program at Tumbleweed. The organization received a grant in October of 2015 to establish a human trafficking program providing awareness and victim services like counseling and legal help. Since the grant went into effect, almost 70 human trafficking victims have come forward.
These are young ladies and young men from Montana, from Billings. They're your neighbors, some of them. Certainly some of the victims that we've worked with, their trafficking began while they still lived at home, still led a normal life, were on the basketball team, the cheerleaders, good students. So it is happening in our high schools.
The FBI identifies it as survival sex, girls as young as 12 being sold for sex as a way to pay some sort of debt. Maybe more frightening, the 36% of victims who are trafficked by a direct family member, often for a similar reason.
And we do have those whose parents, grandparents, grandmothers, and mothers would give them to the landlord to pay their rent.
I have taken the word prostitute out of my vocabulary. In my experience in investigating human trafficking the last few years, I've never come across a victim where that was the case, where she woke up one morning and decided, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have sex with somebody for money.
We want people to understand what the red flags are, both officers and public, and if we can heighten the awareness, and it's just like any other criminal activity, if you make it uncomfortable for people to operate, they will leave.
Pimps and traffickers are expert manipulators.
He's charming, he's telling her how beautiful she is, and pretty soon she thinks that she's dating this guy.
Gaining their trust and dependence before they start the abuse.
And then one night he'll come to her and say, I've got a hotel room set up for you, and tonight you're gonna have sex in this room, and you're gonna get paid money, and you're gonna give all that money to me.
Think about it, if you lived on the street You had to wonder where you were going to eat or where you were going to sleep, or you had a person who had a nice car and you got to have McDonald's and you knew where you were going to go every night, and this person did take care of you in some aspects. That would be kind of a hard choice for anybody to make.
It's not just the promise of food or a place to stay. Traffickers often manipulate their victims psychologically or with physical violence.
If I didn't do it, he would hit me multiple times with a baseball bat, a lamp, pretty much push me through glass doors, walls, chairs, or tables. It really didn't matter to him.
Rebecca was just 16, going to school at senior high, when she had sex for money for the first time.
I didn't enjoy it. It made me cry every time I went out there.
Now just 21, Rebecca remembers finally saying she had had enough, risking her safety to call the cops on a pimp holding her captive. But since, life has been an uphill battle, struggling to have access to her children in the foster system and trying to navigate life after abuse.
I tried being out there to look for a job. It was kind of hard with no ID, no birth certificate, no social, because I had to order my birth certificate from Cali. Tumbleweed had to help me through that because I didn't know how to do it on my own.
While Rebecca called police, many trafficking victims do not, whether it be a fear of their trafficker or fear of law enforcement.
In fact, our laws have very powerful provisions in them to protect that individual, to give them an affirmative defense, sort of as a reminder to prosecutors, this isn't the person you should be going after, and it's certainly not the person we want to go after. We want to go after the organization, the people that are putting this on and putting this together.
The biggest thing that has really changed the way law enforcement handles things is a victim-based approach to human trafficking cases.
Even when law enforcement intervenes, many of these victims find once they've escaped the bad situation, they have nothing other than their permanent scars to show for it.
They're just like your daughters, your sister, your mothers. The victims have the same wants and needs in life, and that they deserve the same opportunities, and they deserve us to stand up for them as victims rather than making them the shuns of the crime or the dregs of society.
Even though it's convenient for us to call somebody a prostitute and think that removes our moral obligation to help them out, in 99% of these cases, these girls are truly victimized in that they came from a very bad spot, and they needed help, and the first person to show up to help them was a human trafficker. We really need to get out of this mindset that these girls are prostitutes. Quit using the word prostitute. I think that they are truly victims, and this is not a victimless crime.
With photographer Brandon Sullivan, Samantha Harrelson, MTN News.